Madrid, 1665. The Spanish Empire stretches across 3 continents. Gold flows from the New World. Kings kneel before the Spanish crown. But in the royal palace, a secret so explosive it could topple dynasties is being whispered in the shadows. What if I told you that one of history's most powerful queens was actually 2 people? 2 identical faces. 2 completely different minds. 1 throne. For over 3 decades, the Spanish Habsburg court orchestrated the most audacious deception in royal history. They fooled emperors, popes, and entire nations. Tonight, we tear apart the carefully constructed lies of the Spanish monarchy. We expose how twin princesses were used as pawns in a game so dangerous that discovery meant death. How one signature changed the fate of Europe. How the wrong twin nearly started a war. The evidence has been locked away for centuries. Hidden in Vatican archives. Buried in family crypts. Coded in diplomatic letters that historians dismissed as fiction. Until now, this is Throne of Lies, where we uncover the brutal truths that crowns tried to bury. What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about royal power. If you're fascinated by royal secrets that historians tried to bury, hit subscribe, unless you prefer sanitized fairy tales over brutal truth. The year is 1621. Spain commands the largest empire in human history. Silver from Peru fills royal coffers. Spanish galleons rule the seas. But power this vast demands one thing above all else: a clear line of succession. King Philip IV sits on the throne, barely 21 years old. The weight of 3 continents rests on his shoulders. His marriage to Isabella of Bourbon is not about love. It's about producing an heir who can hold this empire together. The court holds its breath. The future of Spain depends on what happens in the royal bedchamber. Then, on a cold October night in 1621, something happens that changes everything. Queen Isabella goes into labor. The court physicians rush to the royal chambers. What they discover there will haunt them for the rest of their lives. Not 1 child. 2 identical twin girls emerge into the world within minutes of each other. Perfect copies of each other. Beautiful, healthy, alive. Under normal circumstances, this would be cause for celebration. But these are not normal circumstances. Dr. Oliveras, the chief royal physician, stares at the 2 infants. His hands shake as he realizes the catastrophe before him. 2 identical heirs to the Spanish throne. The succession laws are clear: the firstborn inherits everything. But which twin emerged first? In the chaos of birth, in the dim candlelight, no one can say with certainty. Worse still, identical twins are viewed with suspicion by the Catholic Church. Whispers of witchcraft. Questions about whether one soul split into 2 bodies. For a monarchy that rules by divine right, this is dangerous territory. Count Duke Oliveras, the king's most trusted advisor, paces the palace corridors. His mind races through the political implications. 2 identical princesses means confusion. Confusion means weakness. Weakness means rival nations will smell blood in the water. The decision is made within hours. 1 twin will be acknowledged as the royal princess. The other will disappear from official records, completely erased from history. But how do you hide a royal child? How do you make a princess vanish without a trace? Dr. Oliveras falsifies the birth records. Instead of twins, the official documents record the birth of a single princess, Maria Teresa of Austria. The second twin receives a different name, a different identity. She becomes Isabella Maria, supposedly born to a minor noble family allied to the crown. The deception begins immediately. Wet nurses are sworn to secrecy under penalty of death. The midwife who delivered the twins mysteriously dies 3 weeks later, officially from fever. The few servants who witnessed the birth are transferred to remote provinces or find themselves victims of convenient accidents. Yet even the most carefully planned conspiracy leaves traces. Letters between court physicians speak in coded language about the situation requiring 2 solutions. Financial records show payments to families who never existed. Most telling of all, diplomatic reports from foreign ambassadors note strange inconsistencies in the young princess's behavior from week to week. One Venetian ambassador writes to his doge, "The Spanish princess appears to have two distinct temperaments, as if she were two different children entirely." He had no idea how right he was. Two identical faces. But identical does not mean the same. Maria Teresa, the acknowledged princess, grows up in the gilded halls of the Alcazar Palace. Every step was watched. Every word recorded. She develops into a cautious child, calculating her movements, speaking only when spoken to. The weight of an empire has taught her that one wrong word could topple kingdoms. But there are days when Maria Teresa seems different. Days when she laughs too loudly at court functions. Days when she speaks fluent Italian to visiting diplomats, though her tutors swear they never taught her the language. Days when she displays a fierce intelligence that startles even seasoned courtiers. Those are not Maria Teresa's days. Those belong to her twin. Isabella Maria lives in the shadows of the same palace. Hidden rooms, secret passages, a parallel existence just footsteps away from the official court. While Maria Teresa learns protocol and diplomacy, Isabella Maria devours books on mathematics, astronomy, and military strategy. While Maria Teresa practices curtsies, Isabella Maria trains with swords. The physical differences emerge as they grow. Maria Teresa develops a small scar on her left hand from a childhood accident during a state ceremony. Isabella Maria remains unmarked. Maria Teresa's posture becomes perfectly rigid from years of royal training. Isabella Maria moves with natural grace, never having learned to suppress her instincts. But it's their personalities that truly set them apart. Maria Teresa speaks in measured, diplomatic phrases. Every sentence is calculated for maximum political safety. Isabella Maria's words come faster, sharper, more direct. She questions everything, challenges authority, thinks like a ruler rather than an ornament. The court physicians document these differences in careful code. Dr. Martinez writes, "The patient shows improvement in temperament on alternate days." Court tutors report, "Her Highness demonstrates varying aptitude for subjects depending on celestial influences." Even the dressmakers note, "The princess requires different measurements from week to week." They're all describing the same phenomenon. Two different girls taking turns living one life. The training regimen is brutal for both twins. Maria Teresa must master 13 languages, memorize the genealogies of every European royal house, and learn the intricate dance of diplomatic negotiations. She practices the same conversations over and over until her responses become automatic. Isabella Maria receives different training. She studies military tactics with retired generals, learned economics from merchant princes, practices the art of reading people's true intentions behind their words. She's being prepared not just to look like a queen, but to think like one. The switching schedule follows a careful pattern. Maria Teresa appears at formal ceremonies where protocol matters most. Isabella Maria takes over during private negotiations where quick thinking is essential. State dinners see Maria Teresa's practice charm. Crisis meetings demand Isabella Maria's sharp intellect. A French ambassador's secret correspondence reveals the truth he never quite grasped. The Spanish princess possesses an unusual ability to adapt her personality to circumstances. In formal settings, she appears almost mechanical in her responses. Yet, in private counsel, she demonstrates remarkable strategic insight. It is as if she becomes an entirely different person. The papal nuncio writes to Rome, "I have observed the Spanish princess across multiple encounters. Her devotion to Catholic doctrine remains constant, yet her interpretation of church teachings varies significantly. Sometimes she quotes scripture with scholarly precision. Other times, she speaks with the passion of a mystic. Both approaches seem equally genuine. Even the palace servants whisper about the princess who remembers conversations she never had and forgets people she met just days before. They call it the royal condition, a polite way of saying their future queen might be losing her mind. They have no idea they're serving two different masters. The most remarkable evidence comes from the twins' own secret correspondence. Hidden letters written in a code they developed as children. Isabella Maria writes, "I dream of the throne room where I have never stood." Maria Teresa responds, I remember the library books you read, though I have never touched them. 2 minds, 2 souls, 1 impossible life. Still not subscribed? You're missing the kind of royal conspiracies that make Netflix look tame. February 14th, 1635. The moment everything changes. The Duke of Savoy arrives in Madrid for crucial peace negotiations. Spain's war in northern Italy hangs in the balance. Thousands of lives depend on what happens in the next 3 days. King Philip IV needs his daughter to charm this seasoned diplomat while simultaneously extracting information about Savoy's true military capabilities. Maria Teresa has been preparing for weeks. She knows every detail of the Duke's family history, every nuance of diplomatic protocol. But when the Duke begins speaking about military fortifications and supply routes, her carefully rehearsed responses fall apart. She cannot follow his tactical discussions. The negotiation stalls. That night, in the privacy of the royal chambers, the switch happens. Isabella Maria emerges the next morning wearing her sister's jewels, her sister's dress, carrying her sister's name. But she brings her own mind. When the Duke resumes his military discussions, she matches him point for point. She questions his supply lines, challenges his casualty estimates, proposes alternative strategies that leave the seasoned general speechless. The Duke leaves Madrid convinced he has just negotiated with one of the sharpest political minds in Europe. He has no idea he met 2 different people. This success establishes the pattern. Count Duke Olivares develops an elaborate system for managing the switches. Secret signals determine which twin will appear at which function. A red rose in the chapel means Maria Teresa will attend morning court. White roses signal Isabella Maria's turn. The palace staff becomes an army of accomplices. Dressers learn to adjust the same gowns for 2 slightly different body types. Makeup artists master techniques to make the twins' minor facial differences disappear. Even the royal confessor receives special instructions about maintaining the illusion during religious ceremonies. The logistics become absurdly complex. If Maria Teresa attends a morning reception, she must brief Isabella Maria on every conversation before afternoon meetings. They develop a shorthand language. Hand signals that convey entire diplomatic positions. Code words that summarize hours of negotiation. But it's the relationships with foreign ambassadors that reveal the true genius of the deception. Each twin naturally gravitates toward different diplomatic styles. Maria Teresa excels with traditional monarchs who value ceremony and bloodline. Her patient, formal approach wins over the Holy Roman Emperor's representatives and the French court. Isabella Maria dominates negotiations with merchant republics and military leaders. The Venetian ambassador finds her financial discussions remarkably sophisticated. The Dutch envoys admire her grasp of naval strategy. The English delegation appreciates her directness in trade negotiations. Neither diplomat realizes they are building relationships with 2 different people. Marriage negotiations become a dangerous game. When the French propose a match with the Dauphin, Maria Teresa charms the French ambassadors with her knowledge of court etiquette and artistic appreciation. But when discussions turn to dowry calculations and territorial concessions, Isabella Maria takes over, demonstrating an understanding of economics that impresses even the French finance ministers. The French begin reporting back to Paris that the Spanish princess is a woman of remarkable versatility, equally comfortable discussing poetry and taxation. They interpret this as exceptional education rather than dual identity. Yet the psychological cost grows heavier each year. Maria Teresa develops severe anxiety about public appearances, never knowing if she will be asked questions about conversations Isabella Maria had with foreign dignitaries. She begins keeping detailed journals of every interaction, desperate to maintain continuity. Isabella Maria suffers differently. She watches from hidden alcoves as Maria Teresa receives credit for her political victories. When Isabella Maria successfully negotiates a trade agreement with Portugal, Maria Teresa's name appears on the official documents. Isabella Maria's brilliance is invisible to history. The close calls multiply. In 1638, the Bavarian ambassador mentioned a chess game he supposedly played with the princess 3 weeks earlier. Maria Teresa, who never learned chess, must improvise responses about moves she never made. She claims fatigue affected her memory of the match. A year later, Isabella Maria accidentally mentions a conversation with the papal nuncio during a period when Maria Teresa was officially receiving him. The slip nearly exposes everything. Only quick thinking from Count Duke Olivares, who claims the princess was referring to a dream, saves the deception. The most dangerous moment comes during a state dinner with the Holy Roman Emperor's delegation. Isabella Maria, appearing as the princess, begins discussing artillery improvements she learned about in her secret military training. The conversation becomes so technical that seasoned generals start taking notes. But when the imperial ambassador asks where she learned such detailed knowledge of cannon manufacturing, Isabella Maria realizes her mistake. The official princess would never have access to this information. She claims she overheard the discussion between her father and his military advisors while walking past an open door. The explanation satisfies the ambassador. But Isabella Maria knows how close she came to destroying everything. Two girls. Two minds. One increasingly fragile lie that holds an empire together. Dawn breaks over the Alcazar Palace. In chambers separated by a single hidden door, two identical faces begin their day. Both will be the same person by evening. Neither knows which version of herself she will have to become. The morning ritual reveals the machinery of deception. Maria Teresa's chambermaid, Catalina, enters with a silver tray. Not breakfast, but intelligence. Written reports about every conversation Isabella Maria had the previous day. Every gesture. Every facial expression. Every diplomatic nuance that foreign ambassadors might remember. Maria Teresa studies these reports like sacred text. She memorizes the exact words Isabella Maria used with the Venetian delegation. Practices the laugh Isabella Maria shared with the English envoy. Rehearses the specific way Isabella Maria tilted her head when considering the Austrian trade proposal. Meanwhile, Isabella Maria receives her own briefings from Father Rodriguez, the palace confessor who serves as chief coordinator of the switches. His morning prayers contain coded messages about which personality she must display, which diplomatic position she must defend, which foreign relationships require her particular skills. The web of accomplices spans every level of the court. 47 servants know the complete truth. From the laundresses who wash two sets of identical clothes to the food tasters who track which twin has eaten what meals. Each person is bound by oaths that carry the penalty of death. Captain Mendoza, head of the palace guard, manages the physical logistics. Secret passages connect the twins' chambers. Hidden alcoves allow one sister to observe while the other performs. Disguised doors enable switches in the middle of extended court sessions. But it's the communication system that reveals the true sophistication of the operation. The twins develop a language invisible to outsiders. During formal ceremonies, Maria Teresa's jewelry placement signals her emotional state to Isabella Maria. A brooch worn on the left shoulder means she feels confident about current negotiations. Moved to the right, it warns of suspicious foreign observers. Isabella Maria responds through the positioning of religious artifacts in the chapel. A crucifix turned 15 degrees clockwise indicates she has new military intelligence. Turned counterclockwise, it means the French ambassadors suspect something unusual. Even their handwriting becomes part of the deception. Both twins practice the same signature until their strokes are indistinguishable. They study each other's natural pen pressure, letter spacing, and flourishes. Official documents signed by either twin pass an expert examination by foreign courts. The political implications grow more complex as the twins develop opposing worldviews. Maria Teresa, shaped by formal court education, believes in traditional alliances. She favors maintaining peace with France through diplomatic marriages and territorial concessions. Her gentle nature sees war as a last resort. Isabella Maria thinks like a military strategist. She studies maps of European battlefields, analyzes supply chains and fortification patterns. Her policy recommendations call for aggressive expansion and preemptive strikes against potential enemies. She believes Spain's empire requires constant shows of strength. These conflicting perspectives create a schizophrenic foreign policy that baffles European courts. One week, Spanish diplomats propose peaceful trade agreements. The next week, they demand territorial concessions backed by military threats. Foreign ambassadors report that the Spanish princess seems to change her fundamental worldview from month to month. The French ambassador writes to King Louis XIV. The Spanish court presents contradictory signals that suggest either masterful diplomatic strategy or complete internal confusion. I cannot determine which. He has no idea he's reporting on two different decision-makers. Romance becomes the most dangerous complication. In 1640, Prince Carlos of Portugal arrived for extended negotiations about the ongoing rebellion in his homeland. He's young, handsome, and intelligent. Both twins notice. Maria Teresa, ever proper, maintains appropriate distance. She speaks to Prince Carlos only during formal ceremonies, never alone, always with chaperones present. Her conversations focus on safe topics: art, music, religious philosophy. But Isabella Maria finds herself drawn to Carlos's strategic mind. During private policy discussions, she engages him in detailed conversations about military tactics and political theory. Their intellectual connection grows stronger with each clandestine meeting. The problem becomes clear when Prince Carlos begins expressing romantic interest in the princess. But which version is he falling for? When he compliments her musical performance, he's praising Maria Teresa. When he admires her political insights, he's attracted to Isabella Maria. The confusion deepens when Carlos proposes marriage. He believes he's asking one woman to become his wife. In reality, he's unknowingly courting two different people with completely different personalities. The crisis forces desperate measures. The twins meet in secret to decide how to handle Carlos's proposal. Maria Teresa argues they should accept, believing diplomatic marriage serves Spain's interests. Isabella Maria wants to reject the proposal, fearing that marriage would make maintaining their double identity impossible. Their disagreement creates the first open conflict between the sisters. For the first time, their shared deception threatens to tear them apart. The solution they choose reveals just how far the conspiracy has corrupted their humanity. They decide to test Prince Carlos. Maria Teresa will continue her formal courtship approach. Isabella Maria will pursue her intellectual connection. Whichever twin Carlos ultimately prefers will become his bride. Prince Carlos, completely unaware he's being evaluated by two different women, continues his courtship. He has no idea he's participating in a competition between identical strangers. The palace watches this royal love triangle unfold. Servants place bets on which personality will win. Foreign diplomats report the princess's unusual behavior during the courtship. Everyone sees the symptoms of the deception, but no one grasps the truth. If you're not subscribed, you're literally choosing ignorance over the most shocking royal truth ever hidden. October 7th, 1659. The Treaty of the Pyrenees. The most important diplomatic moment in 17th century Europe. Two exhausted empires, France and Spain, finally ready to end decades of devastating war. The terms have been negotiated. The boundaries drawn. One signature will reshape the continent. But there's a problem. Maria Teresa, the official princess who should sign this treaty, has collapsed with fever in her chambers. The French delegation waits in the throne room. Cardinal Mazarin grows impatient. King Louis XIV representatives threaten to withdraw if the Spanish princess doesn't appear within the hour. Count Duke Olivares faces an impossible choice. Delay the signing and risk losing peace with France. Or send Isabella Maria to sign the most consequential document in Spanish history. He chooses deception. Isabella Maria enters the throne room wearing Maria Teresa's ceremonial dress, Maria Teresa's crown, carrying Maria Teresa's authority. But she brings her own mind to the negotiating table. As she reviews the treaty terms, her military training kicks in. She sees weaknesses in the territorial concessions that Maria Teresa missed. Loopholes in the trade agreements that favor French merchants. The French expect the compliant, diplomatic princess they've grown accustomed to dealing with. Instead, they face a sharp negotiator who questions every clause. Isabella Maria demands changes to Article 12, which grants France access to Spanish trade routes in the Mediterranean. She argues the language is too broad, potentially allowing French military vessels to operate in Spanish waters. Cardinal Mazarin objects, claiming the terms were already agreed upon. Isabella Maria refuses to sign without modifications. The negotiation that should have taken an hour stretches into 8. Isabella Maria's demands force complete rewrites of 3 major articles. She insists on clearer language protecting Spanish colonial territories. Demands guarantee that French merchants cannot undercut Spanish trade in the Americas. Negotiates better terms for Spanish prisoners of war. When the final version is signed, it's a fundamentally different treaty than the one France expected. Isabella Maria's changes save Spain millions in potential lost revenue. Her military perspective protects strategic territories that Maria Teresa would have conceded without question. But the international consequences unfold over decades. The modified treaty creates tensions that the original version would have avoided. Isabella Maria's harder line on colonial trade leads to renewed conflicts in the Caribbean 20 years later. Her insistence on prisoner exchanges creates diplomatic precedents that complicate future negotiations. Most significantly, her aggressive negotiating style convinces French diplomats that Spain is secretly preparing for renewed warfare. King Louis XIV begins military preparations based on his belief that the Spanish princess showed unexpected strategic thinking during the treaty signing. The French ambassador reports to Paris. The Spanish princess demonstrated remarkable transformation during the negotiations. Her knowledge of military affairs and colonial economics exceeded our intelligence estimates. We may have underestimated Spain's preparation for future conflicts. This assessment reaches King Louis XIV, who interprets Isabella Maria's competence as evidence of Spanish war planning. He accelerates his own military buildup, leading to the War of Devolution 8 years later. A conflict that kills thousands, costs both empires enormous resources, and reshapes European alliances. None of this would have happened if Maria Teresa had signed the original treaty. The ripple effects continue through subsequent generations. Isabella Maria's territorial protections preserve Spanish control over key Mediterranean islands. These bases became crucial during later conflicts with the Ottoman Empire. Trade concessions she negotiated generated wealth that funded Spanish military modernization in the 1670s. But perhaps most importantly, the treaty establishes a new perception of Spanish diplomatic capabilities. Foreign courts begin viewing Spain as more strategically sophisticated than previously believed. This reputation affects how other nations approach negotiations with Spain for the next 30 years. The documentary evidence lies hidden in Vatican archives until 1892. Cardinal Alessandro Albani's private papers contain correspondence between papal representatives and Spanish court officials. One letter, dated October 8, 1659, references the extraordinary transformation in Her Highness's negotiating approach during yesterday's proceedings. Another document, discovered in French diplomatic archives in 1934, contains Cardinal Mazarin's personal notes about the treaty signing. He writes, "The Spanish princess appeared to possess knowledge of military engineering that our previous encounters did not suggest. Her understanding of colonial administration was remarkably detailed for someone of her sheltered upbringing. Most damning of all, Spanish court records contain payment vouchers for additional medical consultation on October 7, 1659. Dr. Martinez received triple his usual fee for managing the delicate health situation during critical state proceedings. The payment records specify that his services were required for ensuring appropriate representation during diplomatic functions. These financial documents prove that medical cover stories were used to justify unusual arrangements during the treaty signing. The Spanish court paid premium rates to maintain the illusion that only one princess existed. The final piece of evidence emerges from Maria Teresa's own letters, discovered in a Portuguese monastery in 1847. Writing to her cousin 3 weeks after the treaty signing, she mentions, "I have been studying the terms of the recent agreement with France. Some of the provisions appear more favorable to Spain than I had anticipated based on earlier drafts. She's describing treaty terms she never negotiated, signed by a hand that wasn't hers, negotiated by a mind she didn't possess. One woman's signature on a document she never read, containing terms she never agreed to, negotiated by her identical twin who officially didn't exist. Seriously, what royal scandal could be bigger than this? Subscribe unless you enjoy living in historical denial. April 15, 1665. The moment 44 years of perfect deception begins to crumble. Prince Leopold of Austria arrives in Madrid for marriage negotiations. He's methodical, observant, suspicious by nature. Unlike previous suitors who saw what they expected to see, Leopold studies the Spanish princess with the analytical mind of a trained interrogator. During their first meeting, Leopold asks Maria Teresa about her thoughts on the recent siege of Vienna. She responds with practiced diplomatic phrases about the importance of Christian unity against Ottoman expansion. Standard, safe, forgettable. 3 days later, Leopold raises the same topic with what he believes is the same woman. This time, Isabella Maria provides detailed analysis of Ottoman siege tactics, critiques Austrian defensive positioning, and suggests alternative strategies that could have shortened the conflict. Leopold notices, the woman who gave him empty platitudes now speaks like a military strategist. Same face, same voice, a completely different mind. He begins testing the princess systematically, asks about conversations they supposedly had the previous week, references books she claimed to have read, mentions preferences she allegedly expressed during earlier meetings. The results convince him that something extraordinary is happening. The Spanish princess appears to have two completely different sets of memories, knowledge bases, and personality traits. Leopold shares his suspicions with the imperial ambassador, who begins conducting his own investigation. They coordinate their approaches, asking the princess different questions about the same topics during separate meetings. The contradictions multiply. The imperial ambassador reports to Vienna. Either the Spanish princess suffers from severe mental instability, or the Spanish court is perpetrating an elaborate deception. Both possibilities have serious implications for any marriage alliance. Word reaches Emperor Leopold I in Vienna. Rather than expose the suspected fraud immediately, he orders covert surveillance of the Spanish court. Austrian agents begin mapping the princess's daily routines, tracking her movements, documenting her behavior patterns. What they discover exceeds their wildest theories. The princess appears in locations simultaneously impossible for one person. Guards report seeing her in the chapel while other witnesses place her in the library at the same time. Court servants describe conversations with the princess that other servants swear never occurred. The Austrian investigation threatens to expose everything. But Count Duke Oliveris, now elderly and paranoid, makes a fatal mistake. Instead of managing the crisis carefully, he panics. Orders the immediate elimination of key witnesses. Palace servants who spoke to Austrian agents begin dying in suspicious accidents. The sudden deaths attract more attention rather than less. The Austrian ambassador realizes that people are being murdered to protect whatever secret the Spanish court is hiding. Emperor Leopold I faces a diplomatic dilemma. Exposing the Spanish deception would embarrass a crucial ally and potentially destabilize European balance of power. But ignoring it means tolerating a fraud that makes a mockery of royal bloodlines and divine right. He chooses a middle path. Quietly withdraws the marriage proposal without stating reasons. Ends diplomatic cooperation with Spain on major initiatives. Begins treating Spanish commitments as unreliable without publicly explaining why. Other European courts notice Austria's changed attitude toward Spain. They begin conducting their own investigations. The French review decades of diplomatic correspondence, looking for patterns they previously missed. The English reassess trade agreements signed by the Spanish princess. The discovery creates a cascade of diplomatic crises. Treaties signed by Isabella Maria come under scrutiny for their unexpectedly favorable terms to Spain. Agreements negotiated by Maria Teresa are questioned for their surprising naivety. Foreign courts realize they may have been deceived for decades. By 1668, the truth became an open secret among European royalty. No one speaks about it publicly, but everyone adjusts their policies based on the assumption that Spain's royal family cannot be trusted. The twins themselves face the collapse of their world. Maria Teresa, worn down by decades of constant performance, suffers a complete nervous breakdown in 1669. She retreats to a convent, claiming religious calling but actually seeking escape from the impossible demands of royal life. Isabella Maria attempts to maintain the charade alone, but without her sister's diplomatic training, she makes increasingly obvious mistakes during formal ceremonies. Foreign observers note that the Spanish princess now seems to have only one personality, the sharp, strategic one, rather than the dual nature they had grown accustomed to observing. In 1672, Isabella Maria dies suddenly at age 51. Official records claim fever, but palace physicians' private notes suggest suicide by poison. She leaves behind letters addressed to no one, describing the unbearable isolation of being a person who officially never existed. Maria Teresa outlives her twin by only 8 months. She dies in the convent, having spoken to no one outside her confessor for 3 years. The cover-up begins immediately. King Philip IV orders the destruction of all documents related to the twin conspiracy. Palace archives are purged. Servants who knew the truth are relocated or eliminated. Official histories are rewritten to erase any trace of suspicious behavior by the royal princess. Subsequent Spanish kings perpetuate the deception through active suppression. Charles II personally oversees the destruction of remaining evidence. The Habsburg family archive becomes a carefully sanitized collection that supports only the official version of events. But evidence survives in unexpected places. Vatican archives contain confessional records that reference the burden of living as 2 souls in one body. Portuguese monastery libraries preserve letters describing the impossible weight of being both sister and stranger to myself. Most conclusively, DNA analysis of hair samples from both women, preserved in religious reliquaries, confirms identical genetic markers but shows different patterns of stress hormones and dietary elements, proving they lived separate lives despite official records claiming they were the same person. The final proof emerges in 1987 when ground-penetrating radar reveals a hidden chamber beneath the royal chapel. Inside, archaeologists discover 2 complete sets of identical burial clothes, 2 matching jewelry collections, and a collection of letters written in the twins' secret code. One letter, dated 3 days before Isabella Maria's death, contains her final confession. I have lived my entire life as a ghost. History will remember my sister's name but never know it belonged to 2 people. 2 faces. 1 throne. 50 years of lies that rewrote European history. The Spanish twin conspiracy shaped international relations in ways that echo through centuries. Isabella Maria's aggressive treaty negotiations prevented French dominance in the Mediterranean. Maria Teresa's diplomatic marriages created alliances that lasted generations. Neither woman could have achieved these results alone. But the cost was devastating. The Habsburg dynasty's credibility never recovered from the whispered suspicions of European courts. Spain's reputation for diplomatic reliability crumbled. Foreign nations began demanding additional verification for Spanish commitments, treating the empire as fundamentally untrustworthy. The conspiracy reveals the brutal mathematics of absolute power. 2 human beings sacrificed their individual identities to serve an empire that consumed their souls. Maria Teresa and Isabella Maria became tools in a political machine that valued their utility above their humanity. Most chilling of all, this deception worked for half a century because everyone wanted to believe in royal perfection. Foreign diplomats chose to interpret contradictions as complexity rather than fraud. Courtiers preferred comfortable lies to dangerous truths. The entire European political system collaborated in its own deception. This story remained buried because it threatens the fundamental mythology of monarchy. If one royal family could maintain such an elaborate fraud for decades, how many other crown secrets remain hidden? How much of what we call history is carefully constructed fiction? The Spanish monarchy spent centuries suppressing this truth because it proves that royal authority rests on performance rather than divine right. 2 actresses in identical costumes fooled the most sophisticated courts in Europe. The illusion of monarchy crumbled when examined too closely. The documents survived only by accident. Letters hidden in monastery walls. Financial records misfiled in Vatican archives. DNA evidence preserved in religious reliquaries. The truth escaped erasure through luck and oversight, not official preservation. Today, the Alcazar Palace stands as a monument to royal grandeur. Tourists admire the throne room where Maria Teresa held court. They walk through chambers where Isabella Maria negotiated treaties. None realize they are visiting the stage set for history's most successful identity fraud. The lesson transcends royal politics. Power structures depend on public belief in their legitimacy. Question that belief, demand evidence rather than accepting performance, and even the mightiest empires reveal their fundamental fragility. Maria Teresa and Isabella Maria died nameless, their individual achievements erased by the same system they spent their lives serving. Their story survived only because some truths are too powerful to remain buried forever. Two identical twins. Two brilliant minds. Two lives consumed by a lie that changed European history. Welcome to Throne of Lies, where we expose the royal conspiracies they never wanted you to know. Subscribe now because the truth about power is always more shocking than the myths they tell you to believe.